Welcome to Valemount Votes. We are here today with Eugene Jamin, who is a candidate for Valemount Council. And this is a series of one-on-one interviews with the candidates for mayor, for council, also for Regional District Area H representative, and for School District 57, Robson Valley candidate representatives as well. So we'll be doing the full series with all 15 candidates. And as I said, we're here with Eugene Jamin. Welcome, Eugene.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, that I'm able to be here.
Absolutely. I want to maybe start all of these interviews the same way, and that's just let's get to know you a little bit. For those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have been in Valemount for now 45 years. And I've held down quite a number of jobs. Most of them have been long length. The sawmill I worked at for 33 years. And when that shut down, there was Jacob Hills. I was able to do first aid plus other things for them on that project. I did the pipeline, covering first aid for it. I've done innumerable events doing first aid on a volunteer basis. Mm-hmm. I've raised my kids here. It's been a productive time for me.
Great. Do you want to mention your wife? You better, or you're going to be in trouble.
Well, Monique and I came to this valley, not married. We were engaged, and we were looking for community. And the priest we wrote said, "Come on and see." So we did, and this is where we've been for
45 years.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Oh, that's wonderful. It's all about community here in Valemount, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's why we're here. And what do you do now for a living?
Right now, I am working for BC Ambulance, but that will end at the end of this month. I'm retiring from the BC Ambulance after 26 years. And that's not an easy decision on my part at all.
I guess.
I very much enjoy working with patients in the back of the ambulance. But I do know physically I can't take it anymore, and I need to slow down. Mm-hmm. So I've made the formal decision.
We thank you for your service. That's a tremendous commitment you've made to this community, and that's great. But so you're retiring, mm-hmm. but you're not slowing down because you want to run for council and get on a different cycle. So that's great. Yes. Well, it's all about public service for you then, right? And dealing with the public. So we're going to give you now, as we're giving all the candidates, up to 3 minutes to make some opening remarks. Whatever it is you want to say, you don't have to use the full 3 minutes, but you're welcome to if you like. And I'll just have you look into this camera lens right behind me here, okay. And start whenever you're ready.
Well, as I've been introduced already, I am Eugene Jamin, and I'm running for councillor of the village of Valemount. Came to this valley 45 years ago searching for life's answers. I had met Monique, the love of my life, in Ottawa, where I completed my Bachelor of Science in Geology, and Monique her Bachelor of Fine Arts. I had written my parents in a very important letter that my quest was to find who I am rather than to pursue a career. We heard of Valemount and wrote to a priest in pursuit of community to become part of, to grow in, and to help build community. So we came. 6 months after we were engaged, we became married. We were in pursuit of a simple life, not much in the way of belongings and wanting to make a better world. I found work at the local sawmill, Canyon Creek at the time, working all manner of jobs, and ended up in the shipping office. Monique stayed at home, and we raised 6 kids. As our kids became involved in different activities, so did we. The last activity was speed skating, in which I helped coach and skated competitively. The most memorable moment was when my son Clemens had beat my time in the 500 meter for short track, coming in just under 1 minute. 26 years ago, I joined the ambulance service, and as I said it before, I retired this month. It is with regret that I leave, for I truly love delivering care to my patients in the back of the ambulance. 4 years ago, I decided to attend village council meetings. It is easy to complain, harder to roll up your sleeves and enter the fray. I've attended most meetings and added my voice in pointing out what matters to me, both supporting and challenging the decisions made by council. It has been an education to me in how council works. Thank you for the members of council and Andrew Young who helped me in ongoing learning. I look around me and see how much we have grown as a village. There are services we have, the clinic, the RCMP station, the fire station, the ambulance station. We are getting there. We even have our own brewery, our own bike park, trails to ski, our Valemount Community Forest, even our downtown. I am thankful we have good infrastructures, thanks to the attentiveness of our past councils in laying a good foundation. Our water is a big gift. The CBT grants have been a big boost for our town. Also, we have a good public service department. Thanks to the $20,000 study, we can say with confidence that our public works is doing its job. That leaves me looking ahead. I'm grateful to the study looking at the boundaries of Valemount and the possibility of expansion. Infrastructure will be a big challenge to keep on top of. I want to support local grown businesses over mega projects of development. Adequate housing for those who would like to live and work here is another issue. I want to improve services available to us, especially the health services, for better care for our seniors and those struggling with mental health issues. I want to see improvement of our environment, whether that is recycling or the issue of smoke in the winter. Lastly, we have a great gift showing our care to those struggling with various issues. I want to grow that. The geothermal project also deserves attention, whether it's power for our village, opportunity for greenhouses, a local brewery, or heating our homes in Valemount.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Eugene. Ran a little bit long, but sorry for the bells there. I wasn't sure how to stop it, but we'll make it work. So let's turn to the questions. Most of these questions have been submitted by our viewers. The first topic is on housing, which is a very important issue right now in Valemount. We're currently experiencing, as you know, a housing shortage, which is affecting home buyers. It's also affecting renters, seniors, and pretty much anybody who's looking for affordable housing. Some people are even calling it a housing crisis. It's a serious situation. It makes it difficult not only for the locals, but to those people who are moving here or contemplating a move here for work. I've heard stories about qualified candidates who come to consider positions in Valemount and had to reconsider because there wasn't housing for them or there wasn't adequate housing for them and their families. Current council, as you know, being a frequent attender, has taken some action on this. In 2016, in the fall of 2016, they struck the Housing Committee, and they're dealing with data collection, strategic planning, funding of projects, zoning, bylaws, etc. And they've also recently, I think maybe in the last 6 months or so, agreed in principle to set aside some land for an affordable housing project in Valemount to be determined at some point. So those are two steps that they have taken. So we have two questions from our viewers on housing, and the first is, what do you believe is the role of municipal government in addressing the housing issues we have been and will continue to face? And once you've answered that, we'll talk specifically about your ideas about housing.
Okay. One of the areas is, what can we as a village do as far as zoning, as far as gathering information on the alternatives that we have? There's also co-op housing, but what I understand about co-op housing, it has a lot to do with the individuals who make it up. If there's not a strong commitment from those people, it's very hard to get a co-op. Two of my children are involved in co-ops. One that was falling apart. The people no longer were interested in collectively working together. I have a daughter in Kitsilano that's in a very well-run co-op, and that's working very well there. And in a very expensive neighborhood, they have very affordable rents, which I'm really thankful for her. Mm-hmm. There's also alternatives of that rent is based on income, percentage of income, rather than a market price. I don't know how these would work together, but I really feel we need to explore the opportunities that are out there. What do we have to work with? Right. And then what is the province offering as far as being able to make these things happen?
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. The second part of the question is, what do you think council should be working on over the next 4 years to deal with Valemount's housing issues, and what specific plans on housing would you bring to the table if elected?
Well, the idea of a co-op housing. There's another idea of tiny houses, and I am not sure what our present standing is on tiny houses. I know they pose some particular problems. I'm not aware of them. I have a brother who's a carpenter who's much more aware of what can and can't be. So what are the concerns, and could it be possible that we have housing on a much smaller scale to house some of these people? There's the idea of the co-op. I know there's Habitat for Humanity. My brother's been involved in Nelson, and that has not worked so well. They find that the houses are degrading very quickly after tenancy, but there's exploring why is it falling apart so quickly? What can we do that can help maintain a good, healthy household that's under repair? For me, there are a lot of new areas in this here, and we really need to look at it. But I am very aware that we even have some people who would like to work with the ambulance service here in town. And with our present rate of pay, it is possible for somebody to survive here in Valemount, but when you add a new house to it, then it becomes not possible. Right. So we are sending people away that could be working here, and from firsthand, I know that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's move on to our next topic, which is always another important topic in any election, and that's economic development and economic diversity. As you know, Valemount's been growing in terms of the number of houses being built and sold, and new businesses opening in town. Tourism has also been on the rise over the last few years. However, there's still much that can be done in order to foster future growth, especially in the business and the industrial side. So we have two questions on economic development and diversification. The first one is, what are your ideas for stimulating economic development in Valemount, just as a general question?
I think, first of all, really hearing out proposals that do come. In the past, we've been really eager to jump on big projects without looking at what is it going to cost us. And to me, that is a big factor as to, sorry, it may look like lots of money is going to come into the community, but what is it going to cost us in the end? There is environmental costs, like, are we going to have to clean up after you leave? At what cost will that be to us? Sure, it sounds like lots of money would be nice in here, but what's the impact to our community that would happen? So for me, we need to do our homework with every project that comes along as to, does this really benefit us? Or are we going to lose in the end from it? We do need to stimulate other projects happening. I'm aware that Valemount Community Forest has made an announcement that they're looking at building a sawmill. That would be incredible for us. That would give jobs to people in Valemount with very real work. There's a geothermal project with Borealis. Now, if they do find the heat that they're looking for, those are projects I would really support. our brewery that we have right now, our bike park that we have. They're all really good examples of how we can utilize the resources we have to be a profit to all of us. And I'm aware of the city of Nelson that has, there are very few stores that are in Nelson. They have opted towards small businesses. And that's really where I would like to look first, rather than the big chain stores. And we've seen the effects in our community of many chain stores coming in, offsetting, having to close out the businesses, and then they leave, leaving us even poorer than what we were before. There's a certain impetus in business in that they are able to buy land, build buildings. But for me, we need to look at, is this a good deal or not for us?
But in general, would you say, you alluded to it already, saying you're talking about using the resources that we have, but a smaller focus rather than going after that large golden goose industrial thing that people have been talking about here for years to replace the mill that happened? Is it more that you're saying smaller businesses and more micro businesses and that type of thing, home businesses?
Very much so. What is more sustainable? What has buy-in from actual individuals who want to live here, rather than from someone who's looking at bottom line and they could fold up overnight and take their business somewhere else. I know with the brewery, with Mike Lewis, he's here to stay as far as he can possibly do it, as long as he can make money out of his business. He's vested in our community, and that's what I would like to see more and more is, there's the bike shop that's opening up near the bakery itself, the restaurants we have. Mm-hmm. I was just in Fraser Lake, and they have no restaurants open for breakfast in Fraser Lake. And they are just 100 people less than us. And to me, that's strange.
Yeah, absolutely. The second question on economic development is, what is your definition of economic diversity, and how do you envision that playing out here in Valemount?
Economic diversity is not putting all your eggs in one basket, and that is getting a can-for mill here that can run 500,000 board feet per shift. You can get lots of people employed in that sawmill and lots of people with the spin-offs to other industries in that. But if they close, then a major portion of this town closes. We experienced that in the past with when we were a can-for mill. It was a big impact, and we lost a good third of our population at that time when that mill closed. Diversity means that there are other opportunities to find work in this town for people to be here. It's not all one basket, and I would really like to see that.
Okay, great. We'll move on to our next topic, which is air quality. According to the BC Lung Association's 2017 State of the Air report, Valemount had the worst measured air quality in all of BC in 2016, which is the most current year data is available for, with nearly double the provincial annual average objective for PM 2.5 emissions, exceeding the provincial baseline of 25 micrograms per cubic meter on 72 out of 365 days of the year. And in that year, there were no wildfire-related smoke advisories issued during that summer of 2016. So the question is, do you have a plan for addressing this important health concern of poor air quality here in Valemount? And if so, could you provide the specific actions you would recommend to help alleviate the situation?
I believe the main complaint lies in people burning wood during the wintertime. One of the things that has been done to address that issue is the workshop that was given on how do you light a good fire. What are things that are important to keeping your wood stove burning well. I would love that there would be some kind of meter that would say that out of a particular person's chimney, you can have the certain emissions over a certain period of time during the day. I don't know if that's possible, because I feel that the people who abuse their wood stoves are a smaller, much smaller portion than all those that use wood stoves in Valemount. I would be reluctant to make a total ban on wood stoves, in that there are many people who rely on the cheap wood to be able to heat their houses. I do know there's a health factor that's concerned, and that was when they were burning on Ash Street. And how do you measure personal health against cost? And to me, we don't have a formula that translates back and forth. But I do believe we haven't heard legitimate complaints of people whose health are being affected by wood smoke. This is one that I would like to see, where we look at what our alternatives are. I know with the geothermal project, there is the possibility of heating with the hot water from what they bring up to the surface. That water could be utilized to heat houses in Valemount. That would be a great benefit to us, or even just the businesses in town. But it's finding some way to address the wood smoke that we find where people abuse the wood that they have, the fires that they have, and are spewing all kinds of stuff into the atmosphere. There was also in the States a community that suggested that with the BC forest fires, that they set up fans in the city to blow the smoke back to Canada again.
I saw that. So maybe we could do the opposite? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, or just move it through the valley.
Right.
I don't know. We need to find solutions, and it is impacting people's health. I do accept that. How we're going to solve it, good question. Right. But we need to work on that.
We do. Okay, good. Thank you. Let's move on to our fourth topic. This deals with leadership, communication, and openness as it relates to counselors. So being a counselor requires, as you know, numerous skills. For example, leadership in some situations, consensus building, effective communications, the ability to present Valemount's issues to higher levels of government, the willingness to listen and respond to the concerns of Valemount residents in an open, fair, and a transparent manner. So we have two questions on this, and the first one deals with the Chief Administrative Officer for the Village of Valemount. You appreciate that the position is a very important one, because that is the person who manages the affairs of the village, and also manages all of the staff, and is the sole liaison to council, is a sole employee reporting directly to council. In the past 4 years, there have been 7 CAOs or interim CAOs, depending on the situation, which has resulted in hiring and termination costs to the taxpayers, as well as a certain amount of instability as you keep bringing in new people and having them move on. And there's certainly time that they need to get up to speed with their position. If you're elected as a councillor, what would you do to try to avoid this constant turnover in the CAO position?
I'm well aware of the conflict in that area. It was with great sadness to see that Anne Yancey was let go of. I felt that she was doing a very good job. And I was,
Sorry, just to interrupt, and Anne Yancey was CAO probably 4 years ago?
4 years ago,
or
yes.
5 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. And I was really sad to see that she had to go. She conducted herself in a very professional manner and has served this community incredibly well. I have been in conversation with some of the CAOs that have come by, and they found a very difficult situation to work in here. I really feel that to pick someone that seems to be qualified, that wants to work here, and it's a give-take session. There are parameters that they need to deal with and they need to work with, but it's also working cooperatively. And I think sometimes there's been a hostile environment for these CAOs to come into, where it's one particular direction that's wanted, and it serves a very few in this village, not the whole of the village of Valemount. So to stabilize that means to ask the questions that need to be asked, and then once the decision is made, let us really see whether we can work with this person. And it's a two-way street. It means on our part, there are things that are important that we need to deal with, and there are other things that you'll grow into, that there needs to be some kind of understanding that happens there. I really want to see a CAO that wants to come and work here, and that we receive him and give him what support he needs to do the job that he has before him. And when you have a climate that's adverse to that, then it becomes very hard to stick around. And I have also heard too that 2 of our past CAOs have stated their intention to come back if there's a different administration. So I think that speaks well to, if we have a council that can work well together with the CAO, that makes a big difference.
Right.
Huge difference.
Okay, now let's move on to the second half of this question. It's on communication. So during this council's term, no formal communication policy has been developed. The town hall meetings, which were gaining steam, have been stopped. One of the media outlets in Valemount, and not VCTV, has had trouble getting information from the current mayor. And council has really not done anything to make it easier for residents to communicate and work within the system within council. For example, this is one of my pet peeves. If someone wants to speak as a delegation at a council meeting, they are required to fill in an application, and it must be in by Thursday at 12 noon. The agenda is not published until Friday afternoon. So if you want to speak to something that you think is going to be on the agenda, you go ahead and roll the dice and hope that that item is actually going to be on the agenda for the next meeting. It's kind of a catch-22 where you don't understand what's going to be. They don't tell you ahead of time what's on the agenda, so you don't know what to speak to at that particular time, if it's in fact a time-sensitive particular subject. So there's that, and as a long-time council attendee, you know that there's a public comment section, which is at the very end of the council meeting. People are required to speak for no more than 2 minutes. They must speak to something that is on that current agenda, and they can't engage with the council, or the council can't engage with the speaker. The difficulty I have with that as a policy is that you're not allowed. You may be speaking to something that has already happened. And that's quite often the case.
Yes.
You know, they will have already passed something without having that public input,
yes,
right, at the end of the meeting. So you're left to comment either positively or negatively as to what went on, and your input is really just for the record, but it doesn't carry any weight in terms of a decision-making process for that particular item. So there are some issues in terms of communication with council. The question is, if you're elected, what would you do as a councillor to improve communication between mayor and council, Valemount residents and the media who are representing the residents who can't be there, and to provide a more open, fair, and transparent process that will engage rather than deter public participation.
I have been involved in that process, as you know well. I have asked some, when I first started becoming interested in Village Council, I met a lot with Andrew Young. And he said, you know, your biggest benefit is in listening and remembering. And then every so often comes along a question in which you're able to respond. And one of those questions was when there was a concern for a grant to the Geothermal Society, where an individual spoke up and said, well, you know, that would be hard on the taxpayers of Valemount. I don't think this is a good idea. And I spoke to that one and I said, I'm very thankful for the concern that you have for the taxpayers of Valemount. Why was that concern not exercised when you let go of Ann Yancey? And I'm aware that I rattled someone in that question.
You spoke for more than 2 minutes?
No, okay. In that she responded to the question. And I know by the fact that she responded that I had touched something inside of her. Another time was with Public Works, where someone was being very insistent about this had to be delayed because she didn't have a time to look at what the Public Works document was. And I said, you know, I sense kind of an animosity towards the Public Works. And again, this person responded very quickly and said, no, that's not the case. But by her response, she had made it clear that there was a discrepancy. So public can have a voice. It is limited, but we can speak to the things that do come up. I would like to see that we are able to, on the bigger issues, to say, let's start with public comment. So that if there is a presentation that needs to happen beforehand, let's do it before the decision is made rather than afterwards. Right. There's the question of transparency. When you have a council that's at odds with one another, it means you're not likely to state your position, because are you going to be treated fairly when you speak what is truly on your mind? Especially when somebody may be in the background wanting to sewer whatever it is that you have to say. So that relies a lot on integrity, I believe, of that when you speak, that you speak fairly, you address the issue, you leave intact the person, this is not about ripping apart people. This is not about putting them in. The question may make them very uncomfortable, but it's not questioning who they are as a person. And that's very important to me. But I do feel we need to do that. There are some issues it seems like self-interest is more what is behind the issue than it is truly finding a solution to the problem. The in-camera meetings really bother me. Every week we have every time there's a village council, there's an in-camera meeting. Now, I'm aware that the provincial government has set aside what needs to be treated in that in-camera meeting, and I do recognize that there are people, when it comes to staff, when it comes to certain issues, no, they're not for public information. But the findings, I've heard, they can be published after a certain period of time. I have not seen one of those reports, and I think they're still important for the effect of transparency in our council. That information, whatever, there are things that can't be revealed. If they're having trouble with one of the staff, if there's a lawsuit that's impending, yeah, what goes behind closed doors is behind closed doors, because it involves more than just the issue that's at hand. But my sense is there's way too much that's behind closed doors. And I would like to see things addressed honestly, openly, even though it may hurt. And I have had the ability to do that sometimes in the questions that I've asked during the question period. And I've also at the same time supported, like when the Greyhound was going to shut down, that a letter was going to be written. And I mentioned how the Highway of Tears, that there was an effort by the government to try and provide transportation because a lot of vulnerable women were found out on the streets because they had no other possibility for transportation. And this needs to be accounted for when we're talking about the bus service that we have in this valley. Mm-hmm. So that was not a dig at anyone in this. I'm not in it to try and upset people. I am here that truth may be spoken and that we may make good decisions with what we have.
Okay, so fair to say that you are in favor of a little more open communication.
Much more than what we have at the present.
Okay, let's move on to our next topic, which is a conflict of interest. And I want to read you a little preamble here. So on May the 26th of 2015, the village staff presented policy number 64 to council, which was an enhanced local conflict of interest policy for councils as recommended by BC's Solicitor General. The Local Government Management Association of BC and the Union of BC Municipalities believe that enhanced clarifications of conflict of interest guidelines may be needed in light of the BC Court of Appeals Schlenker decision, which involved 2 councillors on Salt Spring Island, and have introduced a number of considerations for staff and elected officials when determining when elected officials may be in conflict of interest, which run contrary to provisions of the community charter. So a little bit of background here. Policy 64 was narrowly adopted by a 3-2 vote, with Councillor Reimer and Mayor Townsend opposing. On January the 12th, 2016, approximately 6 months later, Policy 64 was rescinded by a 3-1 vote, with only Councillor Salt opposing, with the recommendation that the conflict of interest guidelines outlined in the community charter under Part 4, Division 6 be used as they had been used in the past. So the question is, do you believe that conflict of interest guidelines stronger than those contained in the community charter are necessary? And if so, would you support once again putting forth a locally tailored set of conflict of interest guidelines and definitions?
We do need conflict of interest guidelines. We do have people running for council who have businesses in town, and their decisions may benefit their businesses or may not benefit their business. And to me, there needs to be transparency in that this is where you're coming from. I know some members have used to recuse themselves from certain decisions, and I'm totally for that. We need to be transparent in where we're coming from, and that we do come, every one of us comes with loaded dice. I'm a member of the Legion, and so the decision to the tax laws for the Legion, yes, I do have a vested interest. I would like to see those as low as possible. Yeah, we need good guidelines as to what is a conflict of interest and what isn't. And I'm aware that one member has taken it upon himself that there is no such thing as a conflict of interest, that he can vote on everything. And I don't agree with that. Sorry, there are some things that are for your benefit and may not be for the benefit of Valemount.
All right. Well, there are conflict of interest guidelines in place. Just to clarify, we do use the community charter's conflict of interest guidelines. What's being said here in this question is that with recent decisions and legal opinions, is that the conflict of interest guidelines that we're using are not strong enough. For example, and I'll use your Legion example, they say that if a person is an executive on the board of directors of an organization. They obviously have a vested interest in that organization because they're responsible in a fiduciary capacity as an executive member, as a director. Whereas if someone is a member, they should not be in the past in a conflict of interest because they're a member of a broader organization. They don't make the decisions for the organization. What these decisions are saying now is that a member belonging to an organization benefits because the organization benefits. And so they're suggesting that stronger conflict guidelines are necessary to protect both the councillors and the public in that particular way. It's a complicated situation. However, what's happened in our Valemount situation is we had a stronger set of guidelines put forward by the staff on the instruction of the Solicitor General. They were adopted and then
They were
revoked, rescinded, and went back to the charter. So there is a concern of some people that even though people are stepping out of meetings in a very appropriate way when something comes up that they're involved with, that it may not be enough protection for them. So.
And I recognize too our connections with different organizations in this valley. There is a spirit of the law in which do I directly benefit from the decision that's made in this area? Now, I'm aware that perception alone can be a determining factor. It doesn't matter whether you are or aren't. If you perceive that there is benefit to you, then you need to recuse yourself. I would like to know more about this conflict of interest and how it applies to me in my dealings with different organizations. Mm-hmm. I'm not only involved with the Legion, but also with the Junior Canadian Rangers, which is my first passion, and the Geothermal Society. Like, I want to know more because I do feel that perception can be enough to say, no, you had a vested interest, therefore.
Right, right. Okay, well, thank you for that. We'll move on to our next topic, which is the Rainbow Crosswalk and inclusion. According to Vancouver's Georgia Straight newspaper, as of June the 11th, 2018, there are now 42 rainbow crosswalks in British Columbia. As a little background, on July the 26th, 2016, Council voted against installing a rainbow crosswalk here, citing cost and safety concerns. Prince George installed theirs at a budgeted cost of $6,000 using a low-maintenance, long-lasting material, and Prince Rupert installed their crosswalk for $1,850. With regards to the safety, a study conducted by the City of Edmonton showed that there had been no safety problems with their 6 crosswalks, rainbow crosswalks in Edmonton. They found that the crosswalks did not decrease pedestrian safety. And our research here at VCTV shows that Valemount is only one of 3 communities in BC to have voted against rainbow crosswalks, the other being Merritt and Campbell River, sorry. So the question to you is, given that rainbow crosswalks are seen as a recognition that a community is considered LGBTQ2 plus friendly, if elected, would you support the installation of a rainbow crosswalk on a public street in Valemount? Why or why not?
What my stance was against a crosswalk, but not for the reasons that were, not for cost reasons, not for safety reasons. I do believe that there were murmurings in the background of we were stepping on the toes of religious entities. For me, we have lots of interest groups here in Valemount. We have First Nations people, we have elderly abuse. We have lots of communities here that need recognition. Why don't we focus our energy on things like the times we've come together to raise funds for people in need? There's one that's been done for cancer. There's one been done for a house fire. There's one been for sick people. let's focus on ways of how we can come together as a community to appreciate one another, rather than what makes me distinct and separate in this particular community. I feel, I'm aware this community has a, oh, I'm starting to lose myself here, but I'm aware that the need to recognize individual communities in our midst, but when it becomes something that it makes them exclusive, well, what about all the other communities we have in our midst? That's my concern.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on to another equally interesting topic, cannabis. So as you know, recreational cannabis use becomes legal in Canada in just a few weeks on October the 17th, 2018. It could potentially have a major impact in Valemount, as it is in other communities. Municipalities across Canada are considering their options right now, and there are many options. There's a two-part question here. So if elected, would you support and encourage entrepreneurs to start up marijuana retail outlets in the community, or support only sales through BC government cannabis stores, or are you in favor of banning the sale of recreational marijuana in Valemount outright?
I am not against banning recreational marijuana. I'd be a hypocrite to do so. I have had quite frequent use as a young person, and it will be...
Wait a minute. I thought politicians weren't supposed to admit that. It's a new era.
For me, it's really important to realize where I come from. And I do feel that whenever something new comes into our valley, it's like everybody jumps on it and nobody has the possibility because there's so many stores that open up in that. Like we've had, I don't know of all the examples we've had, but it seems like whenever there's a good idea that comes into town, everybody has to try it, but nobody can make a living off of it then. So I do feel, no, there needs to be a license, and we'll regulate how many we have in this town. We have in Valemount, we have a liquor store that's government run, and we have an independent store that sells liquor. I can see the same model being adopted here. I do believe we'll need to do our homework, and that will be working with RCMP as well. Do they feel ready to introduce that in our midst? There are problems that are inherent to marijuana use, and that's through my own experience, is that fixation can become a big problem. And so what would normally spell danger, that tell you that you need to move out of the way, suddenly that's removed. And the recognition that those headlights coming towards you could possibly run straight into you now become a source of fascination. So I believe working within the law that we have, and no, this is not a free-for-all. Let's consider this as a measured move to provide a good service to Valemount. So no, not anybody can open up a store. And also to facilitate, if it's possible, the use of marijuana as a medicinal plant. I know our doctors have very little knowledge in that area. The claim is that there's not enough research in that area to be able to do that. But I think there are great benefits, considering especially our opioid crisis right now. Why not prescribe marijuana instead of the opioids in control of pain?
Right.
And there are forms of marijuana that are not, where the THC has been removed from the product. So there's all kinds of areas that can happen here. That could become an industry in Valemount as to being able to grow marijuana for the sale of production. I would really like to see something more happen in that area.
Okay, well, it is going to be a bit of a free-for-all for a while because, like it or not, October 17th it becomes legal, and there are no laws right now on the books in Valemount with regards to control. And I don't know what, for example, can you walk down the street and instead of lighting a cigarette, can you light a joint?
Yes.
Right? You can't walk down the street carrying a beer, but can you walk down the street smoking pot? Right? So.
Yeah.
There are those issues that are out there. You know, Valemount as a village can't control what people do in their own homes, but they certainly can say what you can do in a public park,
yes.
right, in certain areas.
And that'll, like, to me, our first council meeting will be after it has been enacted, and I see that we really need to set up guidelines. Part of that is what is the province saying, the guidelines that are there, and how do we address, what is it specifically that Valemount needs to address in this area?
Right. So we talked about sales and we've talked a little bit about usage. Let's talk about horticulture. What do you believe should be the laws on cannabis growing in Valemount proper within the village limits?
I believe the standard has been in the past that those that have medical marijuana can have up to, there's a limit, and I think it's 2 plants, but I'm not positive there. But there is, for medicinal purposes, to be able to grow your own marijuana. I'm also aware that THC content has climbed dramatically over the years when I first started using marijuana, and that was in my university years. There's a whole lot of difference in the product that comes now from in the past. It's quite a bit more powerful than what we've had in the past.
Right.
And I would say that 2 plants would be quite adequate. I don't know if there's in legislation something that says how many you can.
I seem to recall 4 was the maximum you could grow for personal consumption, but I could be wrong on that. But I seem to recall seeing 4. I guess again the village, has to permit whatever's allowed under the law. However, for example, your neighbor complains about the smell of pot wafting into their windows in the summertime when they have their windows open, and it could be from the growing of the actual plants, or it can be from the smoking of the actual product. So there's odor concerns, there's safety concerns in terms of are you growing hydroponically, and how much power are you using, and is it a safe kind of situation? So I think some guidelines need to be established in terms of what's allowed, just like you can't grow corn in your house. Not that you could, but for example, I'm sure there are certain types of things that you can and cannot do under Valemount's current laws.
Yeah, I'm also aware too that the humidity conditions for a grow up are such that huge problems with mold. After a grow up has been into a house, then it's considered trash because of the amount of mold that's growing in the house. Grow-ups would be limited to licensed businesses, not. But I'd also really like to see in that area, rather than the big pharmaceuticals, having the licenses for the production of marijuana, that there would be individuals who can start up under security and everything else, that they have the capability of producing marijuana for the market. It seems like whatever can make money, you can be guaranteed that somebody's going to step in and say, well, I'm the only one that can make money in this area.
Right.
Therefore, all you guys are illegal. No, no, that's not the case.
Well, we talked about it earlier. It's economic diversification. You may or may not agree with the product that's being manufactured, but it is legal, and it is certainly, if you can get the license for it, it could be, you know, I would imagine if you went back to the dark ages when people first started selling alcohol, you know, legally, it's the same sort of situation, right?
Yes.
The floodgates open and everybody wants to have their share of the pie, kind of
Yes.
thing, right?
The new way to
Not
make
a good-
money.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. Our last question that has been submitted by the viewers with regards to traffic, congestion, and parking. And the question is, what are your thoughts regarding the traffic congestion and parking issues on Caras Drive, and also in the Main Street business area where there are people parking half on the road and half on the shoulder and kind of blocking parts of Main Street in that particular situation? And what do you feel needs to be done to improve the situation?
That is a $1 million question, because I find that what we're experiencing more and more is people feel entitled. So even though along Caras Drive on one side, in a lot of locations, they have big signs that say no parking. And what do you have there is a truck parked right in front of the sign. To me, it's what many people feel, that they're entitled to do the following. They don't need to consider that they're being a problem for other people. And that does bother me. But what we can do about it, I really don't know, unless there is a violation that happens. Do we tell RCMP to ticket more people? That's possible. And they do sometimes come into town to, especially on Caras Drive, to ticket. And yet I feel somehow that it's really good while the cop car is there. And when the cop car leaves, then it's right back to normal again. Because the fear factor has gone out of a lot of our penalties. It doesn't make a difference anymore because I am entitled to do this. I really don't know what the answer is in that area. It does bother me that people park in areas that they shouldn't be. Caras, there could be possibly widening the street just a bit more so there's more parking on the highway side of the road, and that when they park, they can park well off the road, that they're not squeezing others coming by. And I know at the same time we had one snowfall that happened, and the ambulance was called out, and we had to go into the parking lots of each motel to get through because the main road, the Caras Drive, was completely blocked.
They blocked all the lanes.
Yeah. And part of that was the slippery conditions of the time. That was because of the conditions.
Right.
So it wasn't just that people were not listening. It is a source of great frustration. What to do with it, I don't know, besides being diligent on ticketing these people. I don't know, I don't think Dean Schneider, as bylaw officer, can deal with that in any way or other. That it would be strictly the RCMP who can issue tickets in this area. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. There is certainly a dangerous situation developing there on the highway intersection with 5 and Caras. Now that the Tim Hortons is open, and I don't know if you've encountered it. I certainly have. Is you're coming down one way, somebody's coming off the highway. They don't yield. They just come straight through, or they turn off of Highway 5 coming into town from the north. And they turn in, and there's people crossing in front of Tim Hortons, and there's people crossing in front of Petro-Canada, and you're taking your life into your own hands, I think, in that area. And then in the summertime, it's exacerbated by all the extra people and by all the foot pedestrian traffic from the people on the tour buses. Personally, I think something needs to be done there. Somebody's going to get hurt.
And yet, what is it that we can do in that area? There are people who break the law in that particular area. One accident scene I went out to, coming off the bridge, over the Fraser River, coming around to go underneath the bridge. When I was in that turn, lights and sirens, somebody passed me with a 24-foot trailer of snowmobiles. And they're all waving to me as they go by. Come on, you guys.
Idiotic.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And I get to the policeman that's already at the scene, and he says, "You think that's bad?" He was coming out to the scene, and a guy from the Petrocan comes, cuts him off to go out on the highway. And he said, "I couldn't stop.
Right.
I need to get out here." And I know something needs to be done, but you're also dealing with people who feel that are entitled to do what they're doing, and it doesn't matter what you throw at them. I thought of possibly from the Petrocan that a divider be put in, because I've seen people pull over way over that they actually block the incoming lane as well, to get out to where they need to go. I don't know what the solution is.
Well, perhaps with discussions with the Ministry of Transportation and a look at that corner, because it's not very well regulated. I'll give you an example. I was sitting in A&W one time and looked out the window, and there was a car coming up Highway 5 from Blue River, and the light turned red. He went into the right-hand turn onto 5th Avenue, and then around the cars that were stopped into the entrance back onto number 5 going the other way. Just like this. Didn't even slow down. Just one. I thought, my God, that's just craziness, right?
I was once coming by there, and the light was red, and a truck ignores them and goes straight through.
Right.
The next vehicle behind him happened to be an unmarked police car, and I heard squealing of tires, and he was after him.
Oh, good. Well, at least they got it. Okay. Well, hopefully we can get some changes made there, because there's practical reasons and safety reasons I think at play there.
And I agree with you. To be able to stop them would be, I don't know.
Okay. So that's the end of our submitted questions. I have one question here that's specifically for you. And we kind of touched on this. You've been an avid council meeting attendee for the past 4 years. Why have you attended meetings so regularly, first of all? And what do you feel you've learned from watching those meetings that will make you a good councillor for Valemount?
Why have I attended? I have a very strong civic sense. I have a very strong sense of if you're going to complain, if you haven't done something about it or tried to do something about it, then don't complain. That's a really important part to me. So I had a sense that things were going to be very difficult at the beginning of the last 4-year term. And I wanted to be a part of what was happening. I was really thankful for Andrew Young, who took over Ann Yancey's position when she left. And I don't know how many times he called me into his office and closed the door and said, "This is how it works." And I was really thankful for that time that he took with me to describe what, even to once wanting to publish a letter saying that one person had been fired without cause and one had been fired with cause. And he called me in and he says, "I can't publish this." I said, "Why?" "Well, it's because you'll find nowhere that either one was fired with cause or without cause. So you are in a position of libel the minute you have this letter published." Oh, okay.
Right.
But I had been hoping that maybe there could be a recall vote. But I discovered the process is you need 10 signatures, and then it goes to Victoria. Victoria then takes it and sees whether there was wrongdoing. And wrongdoing needs to be proved. Well, most of what we complain about is not about actual laws being broken. Most of it is, you can't do that. That's not the way you're supposed to do things. Which is, I'm sorry you guys, but... Right. So I've taken a very specific interest, and for me, nothing is short term. When I get into something, I'm there for a long term. I've been involved with Canadian Junior Rangers since its inception, and I very much enjoy working with kids. It's where I find my greatest love.
Okay, so what have you learned? What do you feel you've learned that will make you a good counselor from 4 years of meetings?
It's not so much what I've learned in the meetings, except that a relationship with some of the members of council, in being able to support them, in seeing what they had to deal with, and giving them background support in, it is a tough position you are in. It's more what I bring with me in my sense of service, in my desire for truth, for honesty in dealings. We need to deal upfront with each other. With all the organizations I've been part of, with my own family, with my relationship with my wife, service has been a big part. And it's not easily understood by others how to put yourself aside for the good of others. And that's what I attempt to do, is to be of service to this community. I hope that somehow it'll be a better place when I go, but I can't be assured. But that is my desire, is that others may benefit from my 2 cents worth to this village.
Great. Well, it's certainly valued. Thank you very much for answering all of our questions. So as we did at the beginning, we're now giving all the candidates up to 3 minutes to make closing remarks. So same thing, you can look right into this camera, and whatever you would like to say in those 3 minutes, the floor is yours.
Okay. What I have to share is very short, and I prepared it beforehand, so I'm going to read that. I look around me and see how much we have grown as a village. There are services we have here, the clinic, the RCMP station, the fire station, the ammo station. We're getting there. We even have our own brewery, our own bike park, trails to ski, our Valemount Community Forest, even our downtown. I am thankful that we have good infrastructure, thanks to the attentiveness of our past councils in laying a good foundation. Our water is a big gift. The CBT grants have been a big boost to our town. Also, we have a good public service department. Thanks to the $20,000 study, we can say with confidence that our public work is doing its job. That leaves me looking ahead. I'm grateful for the study looking at the boundaries of Valemount and the possibility of expansion. Infrastructure will be a challenge to keep on top of. I want to support locally grown businesses over mega projects of development. Adequate housing for those who would like to live here and work is another issue. I want to improve services available to us, especially the health services for our seniors and those struggling with mental health issues. I want to see improvement to our environment, whether that is recycling or the issue of smoke in the air in winter. Lastly, we've had a great gift in showing our care to those struggling with various issues in this town. I want to grow that. The geothermal proposal also deserves attention, whether it's power to our village, opportunities for greenhouses, our brewery, or heating our homes in Valemount. And this is what I have to share.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Eugene. I just want to tell people and encourage you to get out and vote. It is a privilege, and people have fought and died for our right to exercise our democracy. So we are voting this time for Mayor, Council, Regional District Area H Representative, and School District 57 Robson Valley Representative. And the information for that is advanced voting for Mayor and Council for Valemount will be here on October the 10th, which is a Wednesday, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that will be in the Village Council Chambers, which is at 735 Cranberry Lake Road. And of course, General Voting Day is Saturday, October the 20th, and the same voting hours from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that will be at the Valemount Community Hall, which is located at 101 Gore Street. Eugene, thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Best of luck in the campaign. And
I thank you for being able to share where I come from.
great.
To me, this is a great service to the community. And I'm thankful we've got choice this year. 4 for mayor and 7 for councillor.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting election this time, I think.
Oh, it will be.
It's nice. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you next time.